like you to imagine that you are in high school. You're a senior in high school. It is March of your senior year. You've got all your life and vitality, great friends and family. You are a championship rower on the high school rowing team. You're the captain. You have the elite rowing schools seeking you for a Division I scholarship, as well as the U.S. Naval Academy. You have an event. Never been accused of not having passion. You have an event that you survived. Then it's a question of what you do with this adversity. Our speaker today now has been rowing for the US Paralympic Team. He rowed in the 2016 Olympics. He'll be, hopefully, God willing, with our support, thoughts and prayers, be rowing in the next 2020 Paralympics. His name is Black Haxton. He'll tell you more, but thank you for being in the moment.
Thank you for inviting me to speak and for being a new friend. I really appreciate it. This is actually my second time I've gotten to pay a visit to Columbus Rotary. The first time was 4 or 5 years ago now, actually in this very room, which was such a privilege and an honor and a treat, so I'm excited to be back. Today we'll go for a little bit, and I'd like to start by giving you a little bit more background on how I came to be here and my story. And then what I'd really like to spend some time talking about are the things that I think I learned along the way that really made me better. And I want to mean better in the most broad sense of the word, physically, emotionally, quality of life, how I really felt like I healed up until this point. And this is a work in progress. Of course, nothing I say today I think is at its culmination. I just don't think that's how life goes. But we'll get there in a minute. As Callaway said, my story really starts as a senior in high school at Upper Arlington. I was on the rowing team, March of my senior year. You know, all the college applications are out. You're waiting to hear back. Kind of just, you know, in a bit of a holding pattern. School's kind of slowing down. And I played in an Optimist rec league basketball game one Saturday night. And I got done with the game, and my right calf was sore. It felt like muscle soreness like we've all had. I mean, just, you know, you kind of have it and you move on. Well, I woke up, that was a Saturday night. I woke up on Sunday morning, and it was materially worse. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Materially worse. I thought, okay, well, maybe I pulled it. Maybe I did something to it. You know, we'll just we'll wait and see. You know, nothing to worry about. Sunday went on, and it just progressively and steadily got worse throughout the day. And I said, okay, if it's this bad or worse in the morning, I'll get up and I'll go to the doctor. Woke up on Monday morning, couldn't walk on it, couldn't stand. Everyone was out of the house. I remember crawling down the stairs and laying on the kitchen floor, pulling a handset off the counter and calling my mom, who had taken my sister to school, and saying, you know, Mom, I need you to come take me to the doctor. She came home, got the crutches out, went to the physician. My pediatrician opens the door to the exam room, looks, doesn't step in, shuts it, goes and gets a measuring tape, comes back, measures my right calf, compares it to my left, and my right's about twice the size of my left at this point. And he said, well, I'm not sure what this is, we'll see, but ultimately, I just want you to go to the ER. Sends me to Riverside ER, and this is really the last sort of, you might say, coherent memory I have for a good 6 weeks. I was in the ER throughout Monday, admitted to the hospital Tuesday morning, and then I have a very brief memory Tuesday morning of an orthopedic surgeon coming in and saying, hey, we don't know what's wrong with you. We're going to take you to the OR. We're going to find out what's going on with your leg. Like I say, that's about all I've got for the next 6 weeks. Turns out that what I had was called necrotizing fasciitis, which is more commonly called the flesh-eating disease. And unfortunately, it's about every bit as bad as it sounds. When they went in and operated, they discovered that this infection, which is bacterial, which can get in through any break in the skin. I actually can't remember having a break in the skin. Doesn't, you can imagine, I've played that 1,000 times in my mind. No idea how or where I got it from, but it showed up and it was starting to do all this damage. Really, the only way to treat it is you flood the body with antibiotics, try and slow it down, and then you amputate whatever tissue it gets a hold of. Well, by the time they figured out what it was, they'd taken most of my right lower limb off, but couldn't figure out why I wasn't improving. And of course, by this point, I think my fever was 105, 106, and I was totally non-responsive, already in a coma. I said, well, he's not getting any better, he's not getting any better, what's wrong? Well, they went back and looked over the rest of my body and found that it had moved into my right arm, up into the skin and the tissue. Found that, rushed me back to the OR, and my heart stopped on the operating table as they were debriding that tissue. As luck would have it, The vascular surgeon who was operating at the time was my next door neighbor, and runs out, gets the bypass machine, puts me on the bypass machine, and then walks out and addresses my parents. And his dad would tell it, like, Mike, what are you doing here? I didn't expect to see you. And he said, well, Steve, I just operated on Blake, and here's the situation. And he explained that the machine he'd put me on, first of all, was awfully close to malpractice just the way he did it, because people in that condition generally don't survive anyway. And he said, look, we're going to put Blake through an awful lot here, but if anybody can handle it, we think Blake can. He's 18 years old. He's healthy, and I know Blake. We'll give him a shot. But the machine he put me on was actually more of a surgical bypass. It wasn't a sustaining bypass, if you will. I know that's not the right term. But he said, we have a machine at Ohio State that we can keep Blake on for a number of days. I'll give him a chance, whatever that is. He wouldn't put a number on it. And it would also let his older brother get home from college to see him before he passes away. So, of course, parents said, yeah, let's do that. What option do we have? Transfer down to Ohio State. And by this time, the infection is controlled. It's been totally removed. But I'm in complete heart, lung, kidney, and liver failure. Nothing's going right. Situation's deteriorating by the minute. And given where the amputations had happened, they'd put the bypass in at my groin, so there was lack of blood flow to my lower extremities. Over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks, I started to recover, and major organs started to start up again. But the problem was the lack of blood flow was continually constricting my lower limbs. So little by little, over the course of 19 or 20 trips to the OR, they had to amputate a little bit more and a little bit more, try and stay ahead of it. Ultimately, they stopped at my left hip and way above my right knee. I started coming to at the end of this series of amputations. I have really no working memory of this entire period. I started coming to when they were sort of cleaning everything up and survival wasn't too much in doubt anymore. We thought, okay, Blake's going to make it, which was certainly unexpected. But everything was basically destroyed. All the muscle mass was gone. My voice was shot, couldn't speak, couldn't sit up, couldn't eat, couldn't, you name it, couldn't do it. Completely an infant at 18 again. And I was slowly becoming more and more lucid. It was really sort of coming off this anesthesia little by little. And as things became clearer, I realized I'm at Ohio State. It's a month later. I'm in the ICU. What's happened? Someone explain some things. I've clearly missed something. Can I get up to speed here? Ended up spending another month in the ICU, another month at the rehab hospital at Ohio State before being sent home. I started at Ohio State that fall and did finance at Fisher. Loved it, loved every minute of it, thought I would gladly do it again. Ended up in law school here at Ohio State as well immediately after that. Learned a lot, knew I didn't want to practice, learned a lot, went back into finance, and now I'm an investment analyst at Diamond Hill just down the street here, which I have a colleague here, which is exciting, and it's been a great spot. I know I've kind of jumped through the end of this story a little bit, but I want to kind of delve back into that now. Over the course of the recovery, a lot of the physical healing is passive, of course. That's just sort of letting your body do its thing. And sometimes the best attribute you can have is just patience. But there were a few things really early on that I felt like played a big role in helping me get better in a much broader sense. And so I kind of want to walk through maybe 3 of the biggest ones that I felt like made the biggest difference to me. And my hope is, and I already know, that there are a lot of people in this room that have endured a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that this will be certainly no stranger to. So a lot of things I'm going to say, I don't expect any of this to be news. The first thing that I found really, really important, and this really started in the ICU when couldn't speak, couldn't eat, again, totally an infant, but my mind was coming back. And I was starting to have clear and cogent linear thoughts. I realized how important it was to express gratitude before you feel grateful. And that is just one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? I mean, it's easy to be sitting around the Thanksgiving table and say, oh, wow, I've got all this great stuff going on. I can list A, B, C, and D. This is awesome. This is great. I can be upbeat about that. But to be laying in the hospital, on, prom day when there's a regatta going on and you're never going to get back in a boat and you're not going to high school graduation and you can't speak and you can't feed yourself and you can't get out of bed and on it goes. That's an awfully hard time to be grateful for anything. But the trick there is that hope and despair are kind of opposite sides of the same coin in that they're both cyclical. in my view. I've always experienced them that way. And they compound. One bad thing leads to another bad thing, leads to me seeing another bad thing, and then before you know it, you're looking for bad things to be sad about, and now you're just stuck in this downward spiral. But hope works the same way. You find something good, and then that teaches you to look for something else good, and that teaches you to look for something else good. And I think gratitude is the best way to short-circuit that process. Because being grateful is important, I think, for two reasons. First and foremost, it's just the right thing to do. If someone or something or the good Lord does something for you that's good, it's the right thing to do, to express the gratitude for the blessing you received. You're confessing to yourself that there's something good in your life. And that is a powerful thing to get in the practice of. I remember so vividly one of my first real cogent moments in the ICU, and I was in this downward sort of spiral, like, oh man, I'm waking up. And as I was coming to more and more, I was realizing more and more the challenges that I was really facing. And I remember thinking, I remember having this moment of, okay, I need to stop this, because whatever's going on is not good. I can't fix the situation, but whatever I'm thinking of right now is not positive. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to grasp for something good. Just find something good. Well, luckily, my mom was in the room. And I remember thinking, okay, mom's in the room. Oh, yeah, my mom's in the room. Yeah. Mom's here. That's pretty cool. I have a good mom. Wow, that's a good thing. And you know what? My brother's coming later, and that's a good thing. My brother looks out for me, and that's good. So I'm vulnerable, but I'm protected. Okay, that's a good thing. And I've got some buddies that just texted me and are wish I was with them and miss me, and that's a pretty good thing. A lot of people don't have that. And the only difference in the situation was how I was approaching it and what I was thinking about it. And I realized at that point, okay, this is what I need to practice. And I don't say that having figured it out. I would ebb and flow over the months and years of doing this. So I don't say this as a master, I just say it as a student. This is something I've really struggled with, but I know when I'm in this downward spiral, I'm going to start picking out really good things in my life. And that's really, really helped me out a lot. And it also kind of leads me into my second point, which, I've been really blessed with great friendships. I mean, I am really rich in friends, and I love bragging about that. It is just it's the best thing about my life, legs or not. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about carrying your own burdens, when you feel like the weight is just so heavy, and I'm not just talking about a physical ailment or an amputation or something that's manifesting itself in your own life. There are just days where it's hard to get up. And some of those days come when you're being really successful, which is a killer, right? Because maybe you found something that said, hey, this is going to give me meaning. This is what I was seeking after, and I got it. And it wasn't what I thought it would be. Well, what do I do now? Up until now, I had a goal to get to. Where do I go from here? And it's hard to look for a signpost in those situations. Or, of course, in more severe situations where you feel like, well, what am I going to do for a career? Am I going to go to college? What can I do for school? Can I, all these things that I loved are gone. And the things that I identified with, the things that meant the most to who Blake Haxton was to Blake Haxton, half of them are gone. What do we do now? One of the things that was so peculiar about that early situation and really has manifested right up to today in my own life is that when the burden is heaviest for you, I think one of the best ways to get out of it is find a burden for somebody else and to go pick that up and carry it for a while. Wow, I'm going to go, okay, maybe it's not a lot of weight. Maybe it's not a lot of weight. Maybe I'm just carrying a cup of coffee that morning. But I'm going to go do something for someone else. I know there's a burden that they have to lift that I can help with. No matter how heavy my own weight is, I'm going to do that. A piece of advice I got very early on from my orthopedic surgeon, actually, was really prescient. I knew it was true at the time, but it was a really wise piece of advice. He said, Blake, I know that as an 18-year-old guy, that's basically, and he was a direct cat. He was like, look, you've basically lost your independence. You've lost your athleticism, and I know things look bad. All right, you're off to a heck of a start. But he said, and I know that you're going to want to do everything possible for yourself. And it's going to be hard for you to accept help because that's an admission that you need help. And you just need to accept that. He said, not only because it's true, but because the people around you need the ability to do things for you need done. That will help them too. And there was a lot of wisdom in that statement. And I knew it was true, but it was a hard thing to hear. At 18, you don't want to say, well, yeah, Blake, your mom has to feed you breakfast. I know you don't want to admit that. But you know what? Those are the facts. And as a matter of fact, yeah, she doesn't want to have to, but because she has to, she wants to do it. So let her do that. I said, okay, I'll trust that. I'll trust that instinct. I'll do that. And right up to this day, that's a sort of a check on my own pride in a lot of ways. But a lot of the most meaningful relationships I've been able to build were based on a show of vulnerability that someone could step into and say, okay, I can carry your weight for a little bit. One of the things about rowing, which I know I've kind of brushed aside and not gotten into yet, when I started rowing again was actually in law school. And right when I got sick, people from day one, especially my old rowing coach, was saying, well, you can row again. You know, there's this para rowing and it's great and you can work out, and I just totally dismissed it. I said, what I loved about the sport are not things I can get in para rowing, so I don't want, I'm not interested. I'm sure it's great, and if I'd never rowed before, I might love it. But I'm not going to enjoy this. And that was not the right attitude to have, and I'm not proud of taking that attitude into it, but that's how I felt. So finally I got out of college and said, okay, at least I need a way to work out. I could admit that much. And a rowing machine is a fantastic way for someone in a wheelchair to exercise. You can just plant yourself on the machine inside anytime, day or night, and really get your heart rate cranking and just bang on it. I said, okay, that's a good habit to get in. I'll do that. Then eventually that turned into times going faster and eventually getting invited to try out for the U.S. team. And if they hadn't invited me to try out for the U.S. team, I would have never gotten back in a boat. And I don't say that proudly either. That's not a winning attitude to have, but that's the carrot it took. And one of the struggles with getting back in a boat was this boat is big and long and heavy, and I can't carry it. I literally cannot carry my own stuff. To get on the water, to get off the water, I can't do it alone in a very, very practical sense. So from day one, 2014, every time I want to get on the water, I have to have two people carry my boat. Carry my oars, they come out, get in launch, follow me around. I go row, come back, do it all over again. That might be 6:30 in the morning, 7 at night, but it's a real burden they have to bear. They're not getting a lot out of this. And there's a whole raft of people. I could be up here all afternoon just giving you examples of how that has changed my life for the better. But it's so hard to know the impact you'll have by carrying a small burden for somebody else. One of the things that I haven't told this story publicly, and only 7 of the 8 of them know this existed, but in Rio, my race strategy was really pretty simple. It's a 3-race format to get to the finals, get to the medal round. In the medal round, there's 6 boats, and I get to be one of the 6. I'm on an outside lane, and I knew going in that gold was way too far out ahead. I know that's not reasonable. It's a whole scandal while we were there. The video came out of the Ukrainian guy who ended up winning, actually walking around the Ukraine, which was interesting. So we're like, yeah, we're probably racing for second, and then ironically, the Australians got all mad because their guy, who was favored going into the regatta, was doing the same thing, but they hadn't caught him yet. So, now he's ticked, and the rest of the world's looking back at third, like, all right, well, so goes it. It's all public information, by the way. I'm not letting any cat out of the bag. It's just the way the rules are written. So be it. So we said, okay, the idea is try and be within striking distance of third, which I knew was probably going to be Great Britain. China was the defending Paralympic champion. We know he's got some speed. Just try and stay in the hunt. So the first 500 meters of this 1,000-meter race, I said, I'm going to row in my lane. 500, I'm not going to look outside. One of the killer things about rowing, you can't play defense. I can't get in that guy's lane and slow him down. So I'm just going to go as fast as I can. Get through the first 500. Okay, cool. I feel pretty good. I feel about where I wanted to be. I'm rowing well. I'm focusing on my own game. Good. Next 250. Okay, the idea was just survive. Just get to the end with a little bit of gas left. And you can tell, because even though you're looking backwards down the race course, the buoys change color as you're moving. So you get a pretty good sense, and you've raced it 3 times, you kind of know where the grandstands are, you know where you are in space. And I had a sheet of paper down the inside of my boat, because the boat bottoms out and then it rises up to the deck. So there's a little place that's sort of facing you where the rigger crosses the hull. And I had a piece of notebook paper, and I had, 8 or 9 guys that had made the trip down to Rio to watch the race for me. And all these guys at one point or another had carried my boat to the river and back. They literally carried the weight. That was why I was there. I could not be on Team USA if it weren't for these guys. So really hastily, before the heats started, I'd written down every name. Taped it to the stern of the boat. And the strategy was, okay, I know I can get to the end of the race with between 75 and 100 meters left, and I can full out sprint, and I won't materially slow down before the end of the race. I know I've got about 50 to 75 where I can really just focus on cranking on it, and then I'll hopefully collapse at the finish line. But I knew that was kind of the range. So my race strategy was survive until that third 250, get to 100, and count to 8. So that I'm going to get through 8 names, and then just forget about everything. Every stroke is just everything I have to get across the line. That's it. And man, that's a freeing feeling, right? Like, I don't care how bad this hurts. It won't last for that long. Doggone it, I'm going to wail on it. And lo and behold, I didn't end up in third. I ended up in fourth, but I got to pass China there in the end. Couldn't, you can't feel your face. You're strapped into this boat. I didn't know where I'd placed until I got back to the dock. But that was what did it. I said, okay, you know what? If they can carry me this far, I can get 8 strokes, and then I can wail on it. I'm going to be free. And that was pretty great. And I tell stories like this a lot of the support I've gotten over the years, but I really can't express the change the impact that's had in my own life. So no matter how heavy that burden gets for you, that little bit of weight you pick up for somebody else moves them a lot farther than you can ever know. And I just say that as a reminder because we're all given opportunities to do that, right? We're all given chances to step into somebody else's life, pick up their yoke for a little bit, and carry it for a while. And every time we do that, we end up moving the ball a lot further than we think. And little by little, that has such a compounding effect that I just can't stand it. It's just huge, and it's probably indescribable. And the more you see that happen, the luckier you feel. And that's what I want to end on is try not to forget how lucky we are. Like, we woke, for a lot of reasons. We woke up in the United States of America. It's the luckiest place in the world to wake up. Period. By a lot. That hasn't changed. Contrary to anything we want to read, that's not different. I've gotten to see a lot of parts of the world. Hopefully I'm going to get to see a few more. There's no place better to wake up than the United States of America. That's luck when you get out of bed. Second thing, you woke up this morning. That's a lucky thing to do. Most of the people that have ever lived didn't wake up this morning. How about that? I get to be one of them. That's pretty exciting. I got 2. I got 2 really good strikes before I get out of bed. That's not a bad place to start. As the day goes on, we don't really get to see the tragedy around us because it disappears, right? My benchmark for a lot of decisions I've made and how I look at the world was my cousin, Matt, when we were kids. He was 5 months older than I was. My brother's only 17 months, so he was between the two of us. And if you've grown up with siblings or cousins, you know that kind of relationship. It's just kind of different, right? Like, it's not, he's your friend, but it's a little more than that, and it's kind of hard to explain, right? You see yourself reflected in them a lot. And Matt was also a good athlete. We competed at everything, hard-nosed kid, loved to compete, loved to win, hated to lose. And he was a great soccer player, and he made the Olympic Development Program team as a kid in North Carolina back in 2004. Well, they finished the tournament, placed better than any American team has ever placed, get on the bus, they're going back to Paris, and hit icy patch, or a rainy patch, excuse me. Bus turns over. Matt doesn't make it. Matt dies at the scene, 13 years old. To date, the worst thing that has happened to me. That, if I can compare, that no 2 disabilities are the same. No 2 injuries are the same. That's just not how it works. No 2 relationships are the same. But if you want to know how an amputation feels emotionally, and I'll only speak as a male, I don't know if that's makes it any different, but that kind of brotherly relationship, when that gets severed, that's what it feels like. Like, it's not just that I liked this thing, it's not just that I had a relationship with this thing, but I leaned on this thing. I relied on this thing, and now it's gone. What are we going to do here? Well, there are some things you can't come back from, but an amputation isn't one of them. I got to 18 years old, and I got 18 really good years. I mean, you want to talk about lucky? Luckiest kid on the planet over here. Like, the best childhood you could ask for. Then I got 5 years Matt didn't get. 5 really good years. And now I've gotten up to 27 really good years Matt didn't get. And you know what? There are a lot of Matts out there. A lot of Matts out there. And the older we get, the more there are. And that hurts. But wow, I got to get up this morning and try and make a difference. I got to get up this morning and take a swing. And when that paradigm shift for me comes into play, and there are plenty of days I get out of bed, and that is not what's on my mind. On my mind is, man, I wanted to play in that game, and I can't play. I wanted to row that boat, and I can't do it. I wanted to be 6'2", and I can't do it. Plenty of those days. Then there are other days that say, yeah, I get to be here, and I might not have been, and that's pretty good. I kind of condense that down to say, this life's a get to, not a have to. This isn't a prison sentence. This is an opportunity to go out and create something good. And the only difference in the facts of life is what perspective you bring to them in that regard. Again, I say this as a work in progress. I struggle with it as much or more than anybody, and I don't want to act like I've got it all figured out. But those three things, the gratitude, the perception of luck that we get to feel every day, and the opportunity to carry a little bit of weight for somebody else on a day-to-day basis, those are the things that have really meant the most to me in making me get a little bit better. So you've all been a phenomenal audience. I really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, I don't know if we have a little time. I think I'm ahead of my time. How about that? Go figure. I do want to say again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
Blake, thank you, and it's so fitting you're here for two special reasons. One is your father, who I've gotten to know this summer, like yourself, told me that there were Haxton regattas held here at this boathouse, so you've come back home to speak to us at the boathouse today. Second one is the Rotary International theme for the year 2018-19 is Be the Inspiration. Kathleen Locke was good enough to give me an idea back in the spring. That's when I reached out to you through your dad, through another friend, because I don't like to make a pure cold call. Finally, I thought I was talking to your dad when I was emailing with you. So just like at my house, we've got namesakes that make it challenging. Yeah. I like to say my son is the younger, smarter one and better golfer, and it kind of goes on from there. But your father's here, and Mike Scheninger told me that possibly your mom slipped in. Mike, did she make it? Okay, she was going to surprise you, but your dad had told me that he'd only been to one of your live presentations, and I invited him as my guest as long as you knew he was coming, so that's why he's here. So good to have you here today. I'd like you to share a little bit of levity as well.
Oh, dear.
You were ready to go on a spring break trip with a couple of your best friends, and your mom made some shirts for you. Why don't if I tee that up for you?
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, so we're not, never been accused of being all that creative or all that. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So I got sick right before spring break, senior year, and we had this trip planned like down to Florida, like pretty typical spring break trip, me and these two buddies. And they both ended up going to Ohio State with me. Well, obviously that trip gets blown up. But 2 years later, we're back in good enough shape, and I was like, hey, let's go to Daytona Beach. This will be fun. So we go, and this was when I don't know if anyone remembers that all that Charlie Sheen nonsense was going on in the news. That was a relevant headline, right? And so Mom had we teamed up on this, but Mom had these T-shirts made that were labeled 2.5 Men on the front. Just the name of Charlie Sheen's sitcom, right? And they were numbered like jerseys on the back, like 1, 2, and a half. And it was great because half the people you met were they're like, these guys are eating for free this week. This is great. Then the other half just left because they didn't know what to do. You can tell a lot about people that way. But that's a material point because the same guys that really went through my illness with me and helped me come out the other side. You have to have an air of you can't take yourself too seriously, and I like to think I don't. And you learn stuff too. You really, being in a wheelchair, being an amputee, physics is different. First time we went back up to my buddy's lake house, my roommate now. We went up to this lake, and again, it was the first time we'd really traveled with wheelchairs, so we're all in the dark here. We're all learning together. And this gets a lot dumber for the retelling, I guess. But now that I'm actually thinking through it, so we were at one of these beaches where you're on Lake Michigan, and the road just kind of ends in the beach. There's no curb; you just roll right on. I'm like, man, I don't know. I really haven't spent a lot of time in sand and wheelchair. I don't think I don't know if it's going to work. Roommate's like, no, it'll be fine. What we'll do is I'll just get behind you and push, and if you have enough speed, I'll bet we can just keep that going, get through the sand. I looked at him like, yeah, it'll probably work. Let's try it. It ends exactly how a person of reasonable intelligence would think it would. Get to the sand, and it's summer, it's dry, and it's deep sand. 2 inches in, front wheels just boom, right down, 5 inches, stuck. I'm like sailing, like airborne, gone. I hit the sand and rolled. Steve had it way worse because Steve, now not only is his momentum like cooking, he's got this stuck chair in front of him. So he flies over the back of the chair, lands on me, and, well, we abandoned the plan. So, there's some bumps and bruises. You learn the hard way. But you have to laugh about that kind of stuff because it's funny, right? Like, a lot of the situations we find ourselves in are just, like, really pretty hysterical. There's a line that says, I can't remember. I'm not going to attribute it because I'm going to get it wrong. But it said that, God gave us a sense of humor to console man for what he is, and an imagination to console man for what he is not. And I think that's pretty great, because when you look at the human being that I am, there's some consolation needed. And I mean my personality, not my physicality. That's different. Like I got a lot of empty space going on. And to be able to mock that and to have people that can mock it with you, that really makes life a lot better. And I've been fortunate in that sense that I have friends from day one that'll do that. So got to keep those people close. That's really pretty important.
Blake, 2016 at the Olympics of Paralympics, where you described that race so well, felt like we were there with you in the boat. And certainly those 8 that carried you down in your boat down were. You mentioned that there's a lot of steps to get there, but also that you have to qualify. So share about how you qualify for being the U.S. representative in Paralympics, and then obviously to get the Paralympics in 2020.
Sure. So rowing's really a cool sport at the Olympic and Paralympic level because it's one of the only sports that in non-Olympic years you're all one team, which is pretty great. The para-rowing team is actually really small. There's only 3 boats, and there's not a lot of us doing it. But the Olympic team is actually pretty big. And so to qualify, you have to go to the World Championships the year prior to the Olympics and place, it's different in every event, but in my event you have to place top 8 to get your country a spot in the Paralympics. And then the way the U.S. does it, every country gets to decide on their own. The way the U.S. does it is they open trials back up and they say, open trial for the Paralympic spot, first guy across the line goes. And that's it. That's the process. So to get there for 2016, went to World Championships 2015, placed 6th, broke a rib during that race. And that was a lesson in resilience. Racing just to get a spot, and rowing with your arms and your shoulders. Ribs are important. Go figure. But I was able to come back, get the spot, make the team, and so now we're kind of into this ramp-up period where I'm going to the World Championships in a month in Bulgaria, and then next year's World Championships 2019 will be that qualification process again. So someone, it actually doesn't have to be me. Someone from the United States has to place 8th or higher. The U.S. will be able to go to Tokyo, and then we'll have a trial the following summer to see who's in that spot. So really, it probably takes the 24 months leading up to the games to really get your act together. My first race was 2014. It's the first time I made the team, and that gave me 2 years into Rio, and I felt like that was enough time. So the last 2 years have been great. Been on the team, been competing, kept my fitness up, but now it's kind of, we're getting to the point where I can't really screw around anymore. So that's kind of what we're looking at going into the next 2 years.
Blake said he was building up calories when he came in today, and I told him not to eat my dessert. That was the one thing I was saving at my table, but he was eyeing it pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I scoped it out.
Blake, in 2016, you were elected something by your fellow rowers. Why don't you share that?
Yeah. Probably, easily the best compliment I've ever been given was, as I said, the rowing team doesn't bifurcate between para-rowing and able-bodied rowing. And every year we elect an athlete of the year, and it's purely election of all the athletes, but it's combined. And no disabled male had won that athlete of the year until 2016, and I was elected. And the U.S., the way the men's team does it, you generally see who places the highest, which boats get the highest ranking, and then amongst that, someone generally kind of emerges, and that's what happened. Well, I placed 4th. And the next best men's boat was our men's 8, which placed 4th at the Olympics. So that was kind of, I think, there's a sort of unstated idea that whoever gets the best placement of the year is kind of in the front running. But that was really special to get picked by the able-bodied team. Thank
Blake, we're going to do something different today. Usually at the end of our formal speakers' remarks and Q&A, we end. We're ending early so that we're not ending, so that Rotarians can come up and say hello to you and vice versa. They can have some fellowship and networking at the tables. Hopefully you take with you being the inspiration literally today with your great remarks. Thank you for being the inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so please break for gathering and fellowship. Say hi to Blake. There will be no bell at the end. Jackie is not here to ring the bell, so just gather, have fellowship, and we'll see you next week.